From across time and space and throughout the multiverse, listen as multiple generations of geeks come together to discuss the iconic characters, events, and franchises that make up the very fabric of pop culture as we know it. Let Your Geek Side Show presents Then and Now. Hey guys, this is Kitty.
And this is Autumn.
And we are coming to you from the Sideshow Studios in Southern California. This week, jump in the line and join us as we explore the afterlife and legacy of Tim Burton's Ghost with the Most. From helping some newly deads to haunting an entire home, he has become an icon of horror comedy, spawning an animated series, a stage musical, and even some video games in his wake. His name is well known, but you better not say it 3 times or else you might find yourself terrorized by this troublesome spirit and his ghostly hijinks. It's been 31 years since he first appeared on the scene, but the persisting popularity of the original film and its adaptations prove that death isn't the end of the line, it's just the start. It's showtime! This is Beetlejuice Then and Now. All right. Thank you for joining me this week.
You got it.
I think I wanted to start because I chickened out in the introduction, but I kind of wanted to start do your best Beetlejuice voice if you've got one. This is going to be bad, so I'm
ready?
Sorry, but it's showtime.
Hey, toots.
All right. Yeah, it's terrible. And we've already said his name at least twice.
Yeah.
So we can't say it again for the rest of this podcast. No. This is a really fun one. I actually had banked this topic as a want to do, but up until this last year, there wasn't really a now for the Beetlejuice. There was the then, and the then is so titanic. It was, and last year was its 30th anniversary. That was the thing. I wanted to do 30th anniversary, but we missed the boat because the newest thing for Beetlejuice to kind of hit the stage, literally, is the musical adaptation in Broadway,
which afterlife.
This is afterlife, after death.
Yes.
But so this, I think, with the bookends of the original film and now the musical, and I'm sure this property will have much more time beyond that. This felt like a good time to kind of track the arc of the character and also just the story and how it changes.
Yeah, I was really excited when it was going to come out onto Broadway. My first thought, well, I don't know how they're going to tell that story. It's already so wild and so crazy. The story's been told. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
I was really surprised at how much depth they added to it and how many more layers they were able to add to something that I thought was already really fun.
Mm-hmm. And the best part is, I think, when you compare then, the movie has an hour and a half runtime. And my God, I miss the days when a story could be told in an hour and a half in a movie. But the musical gets 2.5 hours, give or take some time for intermission. So they got to flesh out a lot more of the characters, but also things were shifted around. Different emphasis was put on things. I rewatched the movie after seeing the musical in New York, and was actually surprised in some ways where I was expecting a little more from the movie story than after seeing the musical.
Same. I thought the Maitlands were, I felt more fleshed out as characters in the movie until I saw the Broadway production. And then I went back and watched the movie, and they're just very flat.
Yeah. Now, notably, Alec Baldwin does infamously say that is one of his least favorite performances. They've had a number of the actors actually, and I think it's really fun that they've been able to call up people on stage after the musicals. And Catherine O'Hara came up. She was the original Delia. And Gina Davis, the original Barbara, came to see the show. But people know Michael Keaton yet, but people are like, don't expect Alec Baldwin to go support the musical because he didn't like his performance in the movie.
The thing is, I thought the Maitlands were charming in the movie. They were definitely adorable and charming and lovely, but there wasn't much to them until and then in the musical again, they were still a little one-dimensional, but not as much.
Yeah, they get my personal favorite character growth song. But it's all the character growth happens in one song.
It was great.
For fans who have not actually had a chance to engage with the musical, the soundtrack is available now, both to purchase and it is streaming. I think I've listened, and you can, and it's less than an hour because they cut out a lot of the reprises. But yeah, because the movie, the centerpiece is Michael Keaton, even though
he's only on screen for 18 minutes.
18 minutes in a 92-minute film.
Yes, and I read that it took him less than 2 weeks to film his part. Done, in and out.
Yeah, and I think that was a clever use of the sets, especially because he spent so much time in the miniature.
He did. A lot more than I remembered.
Yeah.
Until I watched it again.
Yeah. Hanging out with The Fly and Dante's Inferno Room. And it's just that was stuff they could do very easily just by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
the character for me that going back to the movie and just being not disappointed with, but like the necessary emotional depth added in a musical was Lydia. But because I didn't grow up in the kind of contemporary time for the animated series, and I know a lot of people got a lot of meaning out of the animated series for Lydia, especially.
Right.
That animated series was also developed by Tim Burton.
Yeah, he had a very heavy hand in it. Like, he was very much involved in it from the whole part. I mean, even when he wasn't as involved in producing it, he was involved in the story.
Yeah.
And the choices that they made.
Yeah. And so that series ran almost 100 episodes. I think the episodes were like that 15-minute time block because you could have like two of them together. But taking the character of Beetlejuice from the film and turning him into a wholesome animated.
He was like a genie from Aladdin.
Yes.
He was very much like the genie.
Yes. The darker version of the genie.
Yeah.
And there's three very distinct versions of the Beetlejuice-Lydia relationship.
Yeah.
In the movie, it is she wants nothing to do with him.
Right.
Like, he is her last resort.
He's a means to an end.
Yes. Yeah. To save the Maitlands.
Yeah.
And then she gets roped into child marriage.
Right.
But in the animated series, they're best buds.
Yeah.
They are best buds.
Mm-hmm.
He calls her Lids or like Tootsie or Babes. Babes is the other one that like notably he calls her. And then she calls him Beej or BJ. And just they've got a very joking.
It's very playful, very friendly. And like I said, it's very much like Aladdin and the genie.
Yeah.
If they were to have like a long ongoing friendship.
Yeah. I mean, Lydia even has her
like the Fairly Odd Parents.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, where things don't always go.
It's a little chaotic.
She even has like a charming little mantra that she says that's like the thing. And it's, I wrote it down, but I knew it. Though I know I should be wary, still I venture someplace scary. Ghostly hauntings I turn loose. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Nice. And so it's become like a playful thing to summon him up from the neither world.
Yes.
They also deemed the afterlife too dark.
Yes.
So it's the neither world because it's neither here nor there. Neither
and she provided like some education for him on like how to behave, how to have like a moral center.
Yeah.
And he gave her some wild craziness, like let loose and enjoy and go for the ride.
Yeah. Which I that's such a fascinating
dynamic
to go from the movie where like he's clearly the villain of the piece.
Yeah, he's a demon.
For what little like actual villainy there is, and Charles and Delia are also kind of the villains because you don't want them to win. But to go from that to have such a quick switch in the 90s, I think it was 1990 that series premiered, so it was 2 years later. Very interesting.
And that series won an Emmy for children's programming.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. I believe it either tied for or was right there side by side with Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, that little thing.
Yeah, but so it's interesting.
There's something to be said for children's programming that does so many of my friends who are like of the gothy persuasion, like Lydia was their style icon, but like Beetlejuice is so important to them.
Yes.
Her spider cape is almost the most iconic version of Lydia because of course you've got the black dress and then you've got her red wedding dress, but like so many people do the hair tied up and the spiderweb cape, which is her neither world attire. But there is something to be said about children's programming addressing those topics with both a reverence but also an irreverence.
Yeah.
Personally, one of my favorite child cartoons is a Canadian series called Ruby Gloom about a little girl who always looks on the bright side of the dark side and she lives with skeletons and stuff. And so it's like it is one of those things where you kind of appreciate and you see that it's not so scary. It's just another part of existence.
Well, it's interesting because there was a lot of themes that I thought that he was trying to insert into the film that he definitely continued on in through the animated series, like, letting a little weirdness into your life, the value of that, not being afraid of death or the unknown, that just because something isn't part of your plan doesn't mean it doesn't have value, that you should open yourself up to it and find and that can be some happiness to be found there. And those are all things that he definitely was able to carry through even more on the animated series.
Yeah.
With a little more room.
Yeah. And I can see where a 92-minute film that had a lot of troubles getting off the ground initially.
Yeah.
A lot of changes. They weren't able to put all of those things into it. So it is almost interesting that they chose then the animated series format.
Yeah.
Originally, the Beetlejuice film was supposed to be really dark.
It was.
Like, it wasn't even supposed to be a comedy.
No, not at all. It was a straight-up horror film.
Yeah. And executives at Warner Brothers were not loving it. And I personally like Tim Burton's quest to get a title for the film, because originally they didn't really dig Beetlejuice.
It's interesting. The title I read, like in the film, it's pronounced. I mean, it's spelled the way the star is spelled, that it's named after, and it's literally only on the title of the movie that it's spelled in the easily digestible form, Beetlejuice. So, and then even some places it has a space between, like on the graphic, it has a space between, even though the title does not. So they tried to make it as easy for people to say as possible. But it's the point. Yes, it's the only place where it's spelled Juice is the title. Everything within the context of the film is spelled
Geuse,
which is the star.
It's Betel.
Right.
Betel. Yes, Geuse.
Can you use it in a sentence?
No. But for me, it's also very funny because the puns they tried to originally when the executives were like, we're not digging it. The front runner title was House Ghosts, like house guests. Then as the story goes, Tim Burton jokingly was like, why don't we just call it Scared Sheetless? And apparently the executives really liked that. And he was like, no. Like, don't do that. I don't want that at all. But like those were obviously more reverent titles, like more lighthearted. When you contrast with a story that originally in the script, like we were supposed to see the Maitlands drown.
Yeah.
We were supposed to see Barbara trying to reach out of the car and have her arm crushed. And actually there's a relic of that still in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. When she gets home and she says, my arm is freezing cold. That was a relic from the version of the film where we saw her like almost get her arm severed under the river.
Interesting.
Which is like, I don't ever want to see that version of the film, especially because they're just a sweet yuppie couple.
It is.
Who their idea of a vacation was staying at home. Like I don't need to watch them die. But on top of that, Beetlejuice was like a straight up winged demon.
Right.
Who was extremely violent. There was another Dietz child who was supposed to be killed, who Lydia couldn't see the Maitlands in the version. It was the younger sister who could see the Maitlands, and then Beetlejuice killed the younger sister and wanted to also kill the parents and take Lydia and stuff. But it's just
this is dark stuff.
Yeah. And the name trigger wasn't a thing in the original film as well. He just needed to be unearthed from the grave he was in.
Okay.
And then he had free reign of the place.
Wow.
Which it's interesting looking at some of these things and then flipping it over to the musical, which combined a lot of elements that worked and themes that couldn't be just kept in the 90-minute movie. We have first the element that Beetlejuice is there. He's there from the start. I mean, he's there from like the opening number. He interrupts Lydia's song and says, oh my God, like a ballad 2 minutes into the show, literally. He says, a ballad already and such a bold departure from the source material. Like, what are we getting into for the next 2 hours?
He very much addresses the audience the entire time.
Yes. Yeah. And so he has free reign of the stage. I mean,
is he the only one who addresses the audience?
I think so.
I think so, too.
I think he's the only,
because he's like the connection between the worlds.
Yeah.
Just like he is in the story. Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah, but he has free reign of the stage the whole time. He is watching the Maitlands die in the musical.
Right.
Like he's
prepped for it.
He's color commentary as they're going about their day. In the musical, obviously, they can't drive a car through a bridge, so the Maitlands fall to their death through a floor, like a trap door in the floor. But he's there watching. He's got popcorn. He's got 3D glasses, which is it's so funny. But then you take the whole in a lot of the songs, and especially if you listen to the soundtrack, you get the narrative. He wants someone to see him. He wants someone to, because Lydia's first song is called Invisible, and then he has a reprise. I never get that word right. Called Invisible.
Call the whole thing
called Invisible. Called Invisible on the Roof.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of mythology around names and the power of names, and like something being called into being by the name, and withholding a name to not give away your power. Like there's a lot that this taps into that's very ancient in terms of storytelling and mythology.
And there's a whole song called "Say My Name," which does have a very a friend like me quality.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
If you listen to the two, it does. But ultimately, Beetlejuice just wants a friend, and we do get some like backstory and whether or not we think he's joking
he
about
wants
how
to be
like
seen
his mother
and
abandoned
he wants connection. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
She chooses the booze. But you get the friendship quality that was in the animated series, but you do get also the unrepentant like pervishness of the film, which was I wouldn't have, if they had just made him the animated series Beetlejuice for the 2 hours of the musical, I wouldn't have watched it because he's almost too toned down.
Right. It was a nice split the difference.
Yeah.
Like they made him a little more relatable. They made him a little more human, for lack of a better word, like so that we could understand some of his motivations. Whereas in the film, it was just straight up, I want some power.
Yeah.
I want to cause some problems.
Yeah.
Here.
And Juno said he used to be my assistant and now he's just crazy, so we don't talk about him.
Yeah. That was the end of the backstory.
Yeah. Well, and then they also gave Lydia more of a, sorry, like I think I started on this and saying like in the movie I was as, because thinking back on the movie before I rewatched it, I forgot that Delia was the stepmother. From like because Delia being the stepmother is a big deal in the musical,
right?
Because she doesn't start as the stepmother; she starts as her life coach.
That's right.
And I'm not even going to go into that. But Leslie Kritzer is a goddess,
amazing.
But in the movie, the parents are the bad guys, as well, because the dad is mean and boring. And I know they make amends with the Maitlands by the end of the film, but like Delia is almost like a bully, And then you get an even bigger bully who is Beetlejuice, and they're like butting heads. And eventually, what redeems the parents is the fact that they're not Beetlejuice, and they're like, okay, I guess we can live with these ghosts. Right. But in the musical, the parents are a lot more sympathetic, and Lydia is having a moment where she thinks that her father has abandoned their dead mother, and is moving on to marry another woman. And then you get this beautiful moment towards the end of the middle end of the second act, where the father's like, I deal with death by moving forward and trying to give you a good life. You dealt with death by staying in it. And that's another interesting thing is throughout, I think as these characters have become, like Lydia and Beetlejuice are so prominent in pop culture.
Right.
The thing that most people remember about Lydia is the fact that she romanticizes death.
Right.
But the musical gave her a chance to step out of that, and she does try to kill herself in the musical, and she does try to kill herself in the movie, but she gets a chance to make peace with the fact that she's scared because she doesn't know what happened to her mother after her mother died. And
she has to make peace with the loss and just live with the loss and not wallow in it and identify herself as that loss.
Yeah. And then she has like a brilliant lyric in the song. Like she sings to her dead mother a lot.
Yeah.
There's even a song called Dead Mom. But there's one where she says, I want to go back. She's like, you were my home, but I also want to go back home with Adam, Barbara, Delia, and Dad. And so she identifies all of those people as her family. There was a version of the film where her parents moved back out of the house. They're like, we don't want anything to do with this. And they left Lydia with the Maitlands, who are dead. Mm-hmm. They are ghost parents. And then Lydia turned their house into a haunted house. But like, I don't think I would have liked a version of the movie where her parents straight up left her as well. Like, even if her mom didn't always see eye to eye, the stepmom didn't always see eye to eye, and the father was a bit of a schlub, like straight up leaving her to the care of ghosts is like whack.
Yeah,
like, for lack of a better word.
Like,
that's not good for her.
Right.
And I think it would have not been a good development for her.
Well, that would make them the villains. Like that makes them the villains more so than Beetlejuice could ever be.
Yeah. And I think the Maitlands would have had to have more agency in the film for that to be an effective.
Right.
I wouldn't leave anyone with the Maitlands, even like dead or alive. Like they're very sweet, they're very harmless, but there was something about that. But I genuinely believe that the musical, which I hope tours, but like if you could. Don't do bootlegs. Don't do Broadway bootlegs. Support the cast. But if you can listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah. You can get the story from the soundtrack.
You can get the story from the soundtrack really well. I think the musical combines the best of the movie and the animated series.
Agreed.
You've got the friendship. He only becomes an antagonist when he starts to overstep his. The whole second act opens up on a number where they're having fun running the house. And then Lydia gets to a point where it's like Beetlejuice is too clingy. Like he too badly wants to hang out.
Yeah.
And she's like, and I've got to go find my dead mom. So it's like, it was really interesting that it had that mix of like, she wanted to step away, but also they were best friends and they were amping each other up until she was like, pump the brakes. Like, I don't want to, like, I scared everyone out of this house and now I'm alone with a dead guy.
Right.
Which I thought was a fascinating choice.
It really is. I mean, she needed the connection and he needed the connection, but even when they got it, it wasn't a healthy thing. It wasn't good for anyone. And they needed to progress in order for everybody to like move forward.
Yeah. And the musical is very metatextual as well. One of my favorite numbers, which is such a spectacle in the musical, is Creepy Old Guy,
Yes.
in which Lydia sings, and it's her plan actually to marry Beetlejuice,
right?
Because they're going to trick him, and I'm not going to go into the nuances of it, but so it's her plan, and she's singing about how creepy it is. Because also a lot of people, because Beetlejuice and Lydia as icons, as apart from the like creepy versions of the Maitlands from the movie,
right,
which you can buy as Halloween masks and stuff, but Lydia and Beetlejuice, especially Lydia in her wedding gown, have become like the symbols, and people are like, oh, isn't it cute they get married? I'm like, this is an old man and a
marrying a child.
So they do a very funny tongue-in-cheek number about that.
Fully addressing that.
Which I think is really great and really smart.
He kept yelling, it's a green card thing.
Yeah, in the musical, he's like, it's a green card thing. But I think throughout every adaptation, it's very keen to note that it's a lot of Black comedy.
Yeah. Well, I remember reading that Burton set out to make a horror film. That's something that was in the horror genre, but that was playful, warm, and charming. Yeah. Like that was his goal. And I think all of his iterations of this have reached that.
Yeah. Even as gross, like both physically and behaviorally as Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice is, compared with it's almost like the animated series is the most tame version.
Right.
The musical steps it up and gets a little silly.
Yeah.
Especially, I like that he makes out with both of the Maitlands instead of
hilarious.
Just Barbara.
Yes.
But like Michael Keaton's is the darkest version of Beetlejuice that we'll ever get, because as opposed to the one that got scrapped before the film was created. But using that dark comedy to like tackle very human subjects. I mean, there is an incredible song in the musical about not committing suicide, and it's Miss Argentina, who was actually not in the musical before when they were in Washington, D.C., there was a song by a boy band called Boy Inferno that was called Everything Is Meh. And they were talking about how much the afterlife sucks, but like in a very cheeky way. But they gave her like a very vivacious Latin tango.
Yeah.
Or samba. I don't know the nuances between, but like Miss Argentina, who's like a favorite character from the films and also another popular Halloween costume, like she has this amazing number that takes her of the like maybe 3 lines she says in the film, when she says, "If I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have had my little accident."
Right.
They took that and made it into an entire
whole number
anthem.
Yeah.
Again, it's Leslie Kritzer and She Can Do No Wrong. But the musical has like the best, I think, of all the themes.
I think so too.
In that weird way that you could do with song and sets and an actual sandworm that eats people on stage. And then I think the other thing that best helps this be palatable is if we had the straight up demonic Beetlejuice and the really mean, unrepentant parents and just all of that stuff, seeing the afterlife would have been scary, because it's like, that's where Beetlejuice comes from. That's where the Maitlands ended up.
Right.
But there's something very entertaining about the idea that it's just a bureaucracy. It's an infinite waiting room. It's actually somewhere Lydia goes and then leaves in the musical.
Yeah.
Because she thought she romanticized the idea, and it's like, this is where I'll reunite with my mom. And she gets there and she's like, I have life left to live. I need to get out of here. This is for another period of my existence. Yeah. And then when you're dead, you've got all the time to sit in the waiting room.
Plus she learns, that if you take your own life, you have to work as a civil servant.
Yes. And that's the true lesson.
The real
of
torture.
This film. But I think as the years have gone on, it's gotten smarter and smarter, and the more material they add to the franchise, the more meaning people are able to get out of it.
Let's talk about potential new material that could be added to the franchise.
I think I heard Beetlejuice wanted to go to like Hawaii or something.
Apparently, ever since the first film dropped, like as soon as the film dropped,
31 years ago.
Yep, they were already talking about a sequel, and the story that was actually like it was almost greenlit and like they were gonna move forward with it was that the Deets get a Hawaii, like they get a hotel in Hawaii. And when they get there on a Hawaiian island and it's haunted and they can't get the ghosts to leave, so they call on Beetlejuice to try to get all the ghosts out. And then of course Beetlejuice is who he is, so everything goes crazy. And the big culmination of this whole thing is Lydia summons a tsunami to wipe all the ghosts away. I don't know how that only wipes the ghosts away.
Only the ghosts?
Because wouldn't you think it's the other way around? I would think that ghosts would be impervious to a tsunami. I think
they made that movie and it was called Sharknado.
Maybe, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And apparently that was the persistent storyline.
The Maitlands were cut out of that?
Yeah, we're not a part of it.
Just like they were cut out of the animated series.
Yep. And so that was the deal. And it kept every several years, this would come up to the surface again. Like, oh, there's going to be this sequel. Huh. And even I read it was 5 years ago that Burton had said in an interview somewhere that, yes, the sequel is going to be made and Winona Ryder's going to be in it. And that's how she found out that it was being moved forward.
Surprise.
So she talked about it on one of the late night shows going, okay, well, he confirmed it, so I can confirm that, yes, it's happening. And then that was 5 years ago. And then earlier this year, she was on another talk show, probably for Stranger Things, and someone asked about it. And she said, okay, I have heard him say, Tim Burton, that it's not happening. Wah, and then shortly after that, the WB confirmed it's not in production. So unfortunately, no Hawaii Beetlejuice at the moment.
But they did go to New York on stage.
Yeah, they sure did.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool that this franchise has stayed around long enough to evolve into a musical. And I mean, like, one of the stars, the guy who originated the role of Adam Maitland, has just left the cast recently for a Mrs. Doubtfire musical.
Oh boy.
Carrie Butler, who plays Barbara Maitland, left Mean Girls for Beetlejuice. So it's like everything gets a musical, but like this is one of the this one stands out, I think, against the noise of Broadway, just because it brings back so much. It gives so much more depth. And one of the other, just before we wrap up in a little bit, you mentioned the names as power. It's very interesting, as you note the relationships between Beetlejuice and Lydia and how everyone interacts in the world in each of the series.
Right.
The movie, the name was a no-no. You don't say it. No one should say it, because even the Maitlands can summon him.
Right.
In the animated series, it's almost like the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse roll call. Like, Beetlejuice, where are you at? Like, let's hang out.
That's how you summon him for fun. Like, it's like how you text him.
Yeah. And in the musical, because he's there the whole time, there's a very specific... The ghosts can say his name as many times as they want. They actually do frequently. Like, he's like, I need you to get someone to say my name 3 times. And they say it. And he's like, no, it doesn't work when it's you. Someone in the world of the living has to acknowledge him. Yeah. So the world of the dead, everyone can acknowledge each other, and it's whatever, because no one can affect any change. But someone living has to acknowledge him. And so when Lydia finally does call his name, it's a big deal, because like so many other people have said the name. But it was something about someone in the living world acknowledging him that gave him power, and that adds to the themes of the musical.
It was great. I mean, honestly, I'm wondering now if the success of the musical will bring back talks of another sequel, and if we'll part from this idea of basically what sounds to me like is a Brady Bunch movie. It really does. But I'd be interested to see what happens in the future with this.
Yeah, I think there's obviously,
will it travel? Will there be a sequel? Who knows?
Who knows? I think more than anything, this rise again in popularity proves that there's more after death. Yep. There's an entire afterlife.
Yep. Beetlejuice's afterlife is eternal.
Eternal. For over 30 years, the freelance bioexorcist has been bringing us laughter from the hereafter across numerous screens and stages. The strange and unusual story of Lydia Dietz, the Maitlands, and Beetlejuice teaches us not to take death so seriously, using dark comedy to balance the unseemly topics that we would rather not talk about. Through it all, the movie Beetlejuice and all its Burton-brained imagery have become an irreplaceable, iconic part of horror cinema and pop culture itself, attracting fans both new and old day after day-o. Thank you for joining us. This has been Beetlejuice, 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 Then and Now.
I wasn't prepared. I was like, do not laugh, do not laugh.
Do you enjoy listening to Then and Now? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help keep us going. Please take a moment to leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcasts@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Plus, tune in for our full network of pop culture podcasts. See if your fan favorites make the cut in the Geek Culture Countdown, a bi-weekly podcast featuring pop culture top 10 lists. Hear exclusive interviews with celebrities and pop culture industry leaders as they let their geek side show in Look Who Showed Up. Join comedian Jeff May and his special guests as they discuss anything and everything in Sideshow's Sideshow. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.